Our Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Makhanya, the President of Cape Verde, maybe let me say former President, President Pedro Pires, President Thabo Mbeki, the patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. They are about to come in and will commence. Deputy Chairperson of Council, welcome. Mrs. Makhanya, Professor Chabani Manganya, Deputy Chair of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, President Pires, President Mbeki, Vice Chancellor,
Good evening, fellow Africans, and the great leaders gathered here. Here then, the poet speaks to the people. The Organization of African Unity, 50 years and counting. A rhetorical eulogy. Blessed Mother Africa, behold, the bold, bright dawn of serious reflection and decision has arrived. Coming from across the winding, stormy years, it is the serving breath of a half-century, the trying history of OAU existence, the teeming trials of costly liberty and hard-won victory against colonial terror, of human folly, failure, and fears binding, times of prosperity exceeding, but counted by poverty grinding, the African child reeling in the salt of bitter tears, our scarred continent left bleeding. Yes, glorious Mother, morning has come aglow, flaming as it had in the beginning of creation, arrayed in renewed splendor and beauty, celebrating 50 challenging years and counting. The zeal to work, to earn, to have dignity still mounting. Tides of a new consciousness abounding. A people inspired, emerging and routing. The bad history flouting. The ardent, illustrious mission of African unity. Our great continent rising above its pain, her people reclaiming their dignity again. Sons and daughters of Africa, chosen leaders of our beloved soil, hearken to our cries, our supplications, for verily we too dream of a place and a time when a deep healing peace will descend to muffle the raging, ravaging drums of war. The greed, the corruption, the usurpation, the pestilence of civil strife, the gore, the disease, the death, the disruption of one cruel African to another, the orphan child, the savaged mother. Oh, you cradle of all humankind, behold, we dream, we want, We wait, we yearn for a surging, tumultuous rush and gush of caring compassion to come. Come and bring that cleansing, healing moment of one African to another, of millions of Africans to others, working together, reaching deep, deep into the troubled womb of our beauteous but battered continent, and the precious women of our land, though plundered by the uncaring rogue, now are loved, valued, cherished, honored, protected, and our leaders lifting their people as they rise and rise and rise and rise. Ah, beautiful, beautiful Mother Africa. Let that healing, feeling silence come and cool the burning spirit of our scorched and searing cities in foreign quest of regime change. Come and halt the crass quibbling of ethnic tribal supremacy, those shallow shows of mediocrity. Come with showers of genuine love to save, to retrieve, to revive the African humanity, the African soul, the deep, yearning African heart for ensuing generations of children to come. Ensuing generations of children to come. Oh, Mother Divine, do not wither or decline, for we dream, we see, we need, we pray for that enduring healing peace to come and reign upon the years ahead. Africa's leaders aflame, with the zest of human service and the rectitude of morality, but cooled in the cleansing streams of caring love, compassion, and empathy of one African to another African, of all Africans to all of humanity, lifting one another, lifting others as we rise. Come with showers of genuine love. Come to save, to retrieve, to revive the African humanity, the African soul, the deep, yearning African heart for ensuing generations to come. Africa's leaders aflame with the zest of human service and the rectitude of morality, but cooled in the cleansing streams of caring love, compassion, empathy, one African to another African, of all Africans to all of humanity, lifting one another as they rise.
Today we continue with the celebration of Africa Day, marking the 50 years of the Organization of African Unity. President Thabo Mbeki, patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, President Pedro Pires, our honored guest who will deliver our lecture today, Dr. Mukoni Matabane, Deputy Chair of the University of South Africa, Principal and Vice Chancellor Professor Mandla Makhanya and Mrs. Makhanya, Indira Pires, the daughter of President Pires, you're welcome, sister. The Thabo Foundation trustees present here and management, Dr. Zacharias, Head of the UNDP, members of the Diplomatic Corps all present, Head of Timali, our fraternal organization, UNISA management, students, South Africans, you are all welcome to this celebration. I would ask Professor Mandla Makhanya to come and welcome us as our host.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Mrs Thoko Didiza. I just want to say that, by the way, our poet, who is none other than Dr. Don Mattera, is in fact holding an honorary doctorate with the University of South Africa. Dr. Thabo Mbeki, former President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Pero Pire, former President of the Republic of Cape Verde, and other members of the Thabo Mbeki board present here, Mr. Thabang Makwetla, Deputy Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Ms. Rejoice Mobudafasi, Deputy Minister of Water and Environmental Affairs, and other members of national and provincial government present, friends of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation present, former cabinet ministers, Dr. Zacharias Augustino, United Nations Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative, members of the ecclesiastical community present, among them our Bishop Joe Siwoka and Mrs. Walker, members of the executive and extended management of UNISA, and members of other educational institutions who are also with here tonight, our distinguished domestic and foreign guests, friends of UNISA, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, it is my signal honor and pleasure to welcome you to the annual Thabo Mbeki Africa Day Lecture. At the inaugural annual Thabo Mbeki Lecture at the University of South Africa on 27 May 2010, patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, His Excellency Mr. Thabo Mbeki addressed the provocative question posed by the World Bank in 2000. Can Africa claim the 21st century? He proposed 6 practical steps that Africa must undertake if it is to claim the 21st century, asserting that the first step will be to build and nurture the native intellectual cadre committed to the transformation of Africa, as envisaged by leading African patriots and thinkers in a period spanning some 150 years. He said, quote, "An urgent task in this regard is to rebuild and sustain our universities and other centers of learning, attract back to Africa intellectuals who have migrated to the developed North, build strong links with the intelligentsia in the African diaspora, and give them the time and space they need to help determine the future of Africa," unquote. And at the official launch of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation and the Thabo Mbeki Africa Leadership Institute during an international conference themed Investing in Thought Leaders for Africa's Renewal, held in Johannesburg from 11 to 13 October 2010, the retired Principal and Vice Chancellor of UNISA, Professor Nyameko Banipijan, in addressing the imperative for the marshalling of Africa's intellectual forces towards the betterment of our continent, stated the following, quote, "The partnership and collaboration between the Thabo Mbeki Foundation and the University of South Africa in the establishment of the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute should marshal these intellectual forces and critical voices to Africa's betterment. This international conference should set the agenda that will draw Africa's intellectual resources stimulate young Africans to become achievers, bristling with new ideas, and set the tone for the new positive inclination for Africa that honors its past, engages the present, and shapes the future, unquote. Tonight, as we continue on our mutual journey to claim the 21st century, we will engage the present and shape the future as we tackle the very complex notion of defining Africa's place in the 21st century. And as we do that, we will do so in the knowledge that this evening is but one important milestone in a year of milestones for our continent and for UNISA. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union. As we know, the Organization of African Unity was established on 25 May 1963 in Addis Ababa upon the signing of the OAU Charter by representatives of 32 governments. A further 21 states have joined gradually over the years, with South Africa becoming the 53rd member on 23 May 1994. The theme of this year's 50th anniversary celebrations is Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. According to the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the continent has made great strides in the last 50 years and needs now to look to the future. Reflecting on those who have contributed to this milestone, she said, quote, "As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the OAU and AU, we are inspired by their example and pledge to work together in solidarity for an integrated, people-centered, and prosperous Africa at peace with itself," unquote. Closer to home, 2013 marks the University of South Africa's 140th birthday, and we have undertaken to spend the year paying tribute to the wonderful people, achievements, activities, and initiatives at UNISA, and how these have contributed to our understanding and articulation of what it means to be an African in the 21st century. The theme for our 140-year celebration is celebrating 140 years of shaping futures. I believe that this evening's lecture brings together these remarkable milestones, themes, and celebrations in the most fitting manner as we define Africa's place in the 21st century and contemplate the role that each one of us has to play in building on the legacy of those who have gone before us and bringing to fruition the aspirations of African leaders and the peoples of Africa for Africa. And so we at UNISA continue to affirm our vision and aspiration to be the Africa University in the service of humanity. We assert our identity as a university that is located and rooted in an African context, developing knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary for the development of the continent, where critical scholarship from an African perspective becomes an authentic part of the global knowledge enterprise. As a key stakeholder, not only in knowledge production through teaching, learning, research, and community engagement, but also in the creation of intellectuals and future leaders, UNISA aims to ensure that it facilitates thinking in Africa, on Africa, by African scholars, so as to generate an authentically African voice that will be acknowledged and respected universally. UNISA believes that as Africans, we need to be confident about claiming our space and ascendancy in a global environment that is undergoing a fundamental reorientation, and we aim to make an ongoing and growing contribution to the generation of truly African knowledge, to this country and this continent's intelligentsia, to our thought leaders and to our leadership, and to our socio-economic development. We are proud and excited to be making that contribution. Equally, there can be no doubt that the Thabo Mbeki Foundation is fulfilling its vision to be a catalyst for the achievement of an African Renaissance by mobilizing Africa's progressive forces and creating a platform for dialogue to promote the birth of a continental social movement driven by a new cadre of leaders dedicated to Africa's political, social, and economic development. That platform for dialogue speaks directly to the dire need across Africa for intellectual engagement on African leadership and an African articulation and interpretation of its growth trajectory. I especially would like to express my gratitude to the patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the former president, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, and the board members of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation for the very influential role that they have played in inviting our guest of honor tonight, His Excellency, Mr. Pedro Verona Rodriguez Pires, the former president of Cape Verde. Your Excellency, you are most welcome. I wish also to thank and welcome all leaders from the local, provincial, and national government, members of the diplomatic corps present tonight, as well as leaders of universities and research institutes, leaders of various formations, including political parties and community organizations, leaders from the business sector, and members of the media, UNISA students and student leaders, as well as our staff and members of society who are present tonight. We are delighted that you have honored us with your presence tonight. In conclusion, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the patron of the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute, former President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Thabo Mbeki. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I could go on and on listing the accolades of the men who immortalized the proud claim, I am an African. But I would like to share with you the delightfully personal summary provided by the former governor of the Reserve Bank, Mr. Tito Mboweni, in his speech entitled Reflections on the Life and Times of President Thabo Mbeki, from a lecture delivered at the ANC branch meetings at the University of Johannesburg and at Helderfontein Conference Center, Johannesburg, November 23 and 24, 2012, respectively. Mr. Mboweni summed it up so beautifully when he said, quote, "And so from the mission schools emerged a whole crop of early African intellectuals who could not countenance exclusion from normal participation in the affairs of state, or their being made second or third-class citizens in their own country. They fought with all means at their disposal. They wrote, petitioned, protested, started newspapers, Ilanga laseNatal, Imvo Zabansundu, and many others, preached equality in their churches, joined forces with chiefs and commoners, and linked up with like-minded people in the United States of America and the United Kingdom, and founded all types of organizations towards the end of equality and justice. They fought hard for our freedoms. These characteristics of our forebears have found concrete expression in President Mbeki, a thinker, a writer, an organizer, political leader, a campaigner, and above all, someone who is committed to the freedom and advancement of his people in South Africa, in Africa, and in the African diaspora, and amongst all who are exploited and excluded by the global forces of power and money, unquote. Your Excellency, patron of the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute, I now call upon you to come to the podium to welcome our guest lecturer this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Makhanya, and President Pedro Pires, and friends. You will see, according to this program, which I think everybody has got, it says here, I must introduce the President. A few months ago, I phoned the President Pires, and said to him, could he please come this year to deliver this Africa Day lecture? And I'm very, very glad indeed that he immediately, very promptly, without any hesitation, agreed. I was very, very glad about that, because we had discussed this matter as to whom we should invite this year. Pedro Pires was here last year. People who might have come last year will remember that he sat on a panel with President Obasanjo and President Chisano and myself to celebrate Africa Day then. But he has come back this day, this time as our lecturer. I'm saying that we discussed this matter as to whom we should invite, because exactly of what has been mentioned by our program director, by what Professor Makhanya has just said, that this is the 50th anniversary of the OAU. And therefore, a special year for the continent, and indeed the reason we're meeting today here on the 31st of May rather than the 25th of May is because we had to respect a very big celebration that took place at the OAU headquarters in Addis Ababa on the 25th of May. So we agreed that we would postpone our own celebration here out of respect for that process at the AU. In the course of our discussion as a foundation to say who is going to be our lecturer today, indeed in the end we all agreed that we should ask President Pedro Pires to deliver the lecture this year. Because indeed the occasion of this 50th anniversary of the OAU is indeed an opportunity to discuss Africa yesterday, Africa today, Africa tomorrow, to reflect on all of these challenges in order to say where do we go from here. And indeed we decided on President Pires because we believed that he was eminently qualified to address all of these questions. And that indeed you could not have a better lecturer on this occasion of the 50th anniversary of the OAU than himself. I'm saying eminently qualified because President Pires bridges a whole period of time on our continent. We have with us here an outstanding liberation fighter, person who, when you say let's go into the bushes, into the jungle, take up gun and fight, knows exactly what that means. Because he was a member of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, together with the late Amilcar Cabral. These are the people who fought to end Portuguese colonialism on our continent. And so, President, some people from the state side, government side, will say, Your Excellency, but from the rest of us will say, Comrade. And President Pires did all sorts of other things on our continent. Indeed, even if we look at the ending of the war in Angola, which resulted in the withdrawal of the South African Defense Force from there, which led to the independence of Namibia. Again, we'll turn to President Pedro Pires to say thank you very much for his contribution towards that. You are therefore also dealing here with a statesman, Prime Minister and President of Cape Verde, who during the time that he was in government did many things, including achieving important socio-economic development in Cape Verde, including entrenching the process of democracy on this sister African country. So we're saying because of all of these experiences, which stress from then the days of the liberation struggle to liberate our continent to the rebuilding of the continent, we don't think of anybody better qualified than President Pedro Pires, Comrade Pires, to deliver this year's Africa lecture. So that's the introduction of the President. President, thank you very much for coming. Welcome. Twice, what do I say, Togo? Please, President, come and take over here. Thanks.
Good afternoon. And I go to say some words in English, you know. I'm proud to be here with you. I'm happy to be here. 50 years ago, this date was a dream. A dream, and 50 years there is the reality. And the Africa is changed. The world is changed. But a luta continua.
At the outset, allow me to thank my friend, President Mbeki, for his kind invitation. I would also like to thank all of you for your presence and interest here tonight. I must confess that I never imagined that I would take on the role of speaker at conferences, as has been the case so often lately since leaving active political life. I have no intention to present an elaborate historical study this evening. Rather, I would like to present you with some of my memories and reflections which I have gathered over my years as freedom fighter and later as politician or political leader.